about it during the announcements. The sermon title is Shamukla's Got Talent, and obviously it's based on the TV show America's Got Talent, and I assume most of you have probably either watched it or at least know what it is. Excuse me, but America's Got Talent, the TV show, is basically people show up with whatever they think is their greatest talent, and sometimes they're really good. Sometimes it's like singing or whatever. Sometimes it's just weird. I mean, like they had this one girl, which was kind of cool, but I don't know how you would actually use that in society, but she could shoot a bow and arrow like into this bullseye from a football field away using nothing but her feet. Awesome, but the goal of the program, the goal of the show is if you win, you get a $1 million contract in Las Vegas to do a show. So she's going to do this every night for a year? I mean, other ones, though, they sing and they sing beautifully. They've had a young lady who was a ventriloquist that was, honestly, she was pretty awesome. She won and she got a contract. Another one won, who was a fantastic singer. One season, the guy won, who was a great magician. But my favorite one, come on, his name is Tape Face. Yeah, you heard me right. Tape Face. He is this weird-looking guy with big eyes, and he has duct tape across his mouth. And you know what his talent is? He's a comedian. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. He is a comedian who can't talk because he's got tape over his face. And you think, well, how could that happen? He won. No joke, he was that funny. And he's doing a show right now in Las Vegas. And I promise you, if I get in Las Vegas and he's still there, I'm going to his show. He is that funny. And who would ever thought a guy with tape on his mouth could be a comedian and could win a show in Las Vegas, $1 million. It's fantastic. But the point of the show is beat everybody else. Use whatever talent you have. You pick your best talent and you use it, and your goal is, I want my talent to be better than everybody else's. That's how you win the prize. That is not the point of this girl. That's America's Got Talent. Shamukla's Got Talent, we judge on a different scale. Because what Jesus is saying and what he's going to show us in this parable is that it's not about you having the best talent in this church and you get the prize. Jesus judges based on the fact that everybody has a talent, and you're judged based on how well you use what you have been given. Now, we're not talking about a participation trophy. We're not talking about like I coached a little league baseball team back in the day, and everybody got a trophy. That's sweet. But the kid that was laying out in right field doing grass angels during the whole game, he got a trophy too. Just because he wandered out onto the field. That's not what Jesus is talking about. We're not talking about Oprah's philosophy that, oh, there's many pathways to God. Oh, that as long as you are alive, you will get the trophy. That's not what Jesus is talking about. He has some specific criteria on how he is going to judge. And it's not that you have to have the best talent, but you don't get to just be breathing either. He has specific criteria. He wants you to use the talent that he gave you to the best of your ability. So we're going to look at that parable today. Last time but the parable right before this one in the Bible was the parable of the 10 virgins. And right after the parable of the 10 virgins, which was all about how to be prepared for the second coming, and to be waiting for the second coming, he immediately goes into this parable, the parable of the talents, which is about what we should be doing while the master is away. So let's look at it. Matthew 25, verse 14. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, and to another 2, and to another 1, and to each according to his ability. Then he went away. You know, the term talent was not talking about what we talk about talents. The term talent back then was a measure, it was a weight of silver. It could be like typically around 40 or 50 pounds of silver. And a talent had to do with, it had to do with wealth. If you had a talent of silver, that was roughly equivalent to about 20 years' wages. In modern English, it's probably something along the lines of about $1 million. So in the parable, Jesus is saying, okay, this man had a lot of silver. He had like all this silver. And to one, he gave $1 million worth. And then to another one, he gave $2 million worth. And then to the last one, he gave $5 million worth. And so that's what he's talking about. But I don't think that it's a coincidence that the word that Jesus used was the word talent. Because I don't think he was just talking about money. Obviously, he could be talking about money. If God has blessed you, then he expects you to use it for his kingdom and not hoard it. But that's a different parable. So look at what this says first, what Jesus says first in this parable. The first thing he says is that the master entrusts his property. He said it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. Everything that we have is God's. We say that, but do you really mean it? He says his property. That talent, that silver did not belong to the servants. They were entrusted with it. Psalm 24:1 says this: the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Nothing that we have, not our money, not the breath that we take, not my energy, which is waning, not my influence, nothing that I have is actually mine. What Jesus is saying is, you're a manager of what God entrusted you with. I like to, I'm not going to say invest in the stock market. I like to play at the stock market. And the whole point of being in the stock market is you want something called an ROI. You want a return on investment. If I put my money in a company or in a group of companies, in like a mutual fund or an ETF or something like this, the whole point is I don't want to lose money every day, like Friday. What I want to do is hopefully, consistently, I will make more money. It's called a return on my investment. That's the whole goal of it. So think about it from God's perspective. The Bible says that he entrusted us with talent. Do you think he does not expect a return on investment? If he entrusted you with something, he expects you to do something with it to bring in a return. My time is not my own. God invested his time in me. I looked it up. Every day, God gives me 86,400 seconds every day. And you know what? You can't carry them over. You don't get to bank them away. Melissa was talking the other night. She's hoping to retire in about a year or whatever. And she's talking about how much, PPT, how much sick leave and how much vacation time she has. And you can bank that away. It doesn't work that way. God's investment with us is tick, tick, tick. It's ticking away. You only get so many seconds. You only get so many minutes. You only get so many hours in your day. And what do we spend a lot of our time on it? I mean, we spend a lot of time, what? Swiping? Scrolling? Just wasting time. I'm not saying that you have to be involved in ministry every second of the day. But the point of the parable is to cause us, to force us to look at what we're doing with God, with what God has entrusted me with. He entrusted me with his time. It's up to him how long I have. He entrusted me with where I live, with the church that I worship in. He entrusted me with my house. My house doesn't belong to me. Usually they belong to the bank, but that's a different thing. He entrusted you with your house. What are you using your house for? Is it just for your enjoyment, or are you using your house as a place of ministry? Return on investment. See, here's the thing. We think that we are entitled to what we have. We think that we are entitled, but the Bible says what Jesus is talking about is he entrusted you. He entrusted you with everything that you have. So what are you doing with it? So in verse 14 of Matthew 25, it says this, for it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. He entrusted his property to them. To one, he gave 5 talents, like $5 million. To another, 2, and to another 1, to each according to his ability. And then he went away. You know, I always wondered why, you know, it doesn't seem fair. Like, you gave the one guy $1 million, but you gave that one $5 million. That don't seem fair. Because in our mindset, we think, well, God's going to judge, like that's not fair. He started out ahead. He started out with 5, and I only got 1. So how is that fair? I'm never going to be able to compete with this guy. But see, that's how the world views it. That's America's Got Talent. Whoever has the most talent is the winner and gets the prize. And Jesus says, no, it's not about how many. I'm going to give you what I choose to give you. And the way you're going to be judged is not based on compared to everybody else and how they use their talents. It's based on how you use your talent that I entrusted. I trusted you with this. So it doesn't matter how much you have. God doesn't judge us based on who has the most talent, but who has the highest potential and uses it to the highest potential. The word in the Greek there for ability, it literally means the capacity or the potential. So the master in this parable, he knew each servant's capacity. He knew their potential, just like he knows mine. And if I want my capacity to grow, it will. It's like going to the gym. Like when y'all go to the gym, not when I go to the gym, but when y'all go to the gym, if you work with a personal trainer, I've been in there before and I've worked with a personal trainer exactly once, and I felt intimidated. I felt like I wasn't being treated fair because the guy beside me, now he was a musclehead, but he had him working out with 70-pound weights, and he gave me this little 5-pound people. It kind of hurt my feelings. But he also knew, he wasn't judging me, he knew that I wasn't ready for that. But if I work it this long enough, what happens? Well, I can move up to the blue ones, but okay, eventually maybe the other one. A lot of times, what we want to do though is, I want to look at you and I want to look at your talents and your abilities and your gifts, and I want to compare myself to that. And how come I don't have that? And Jesus is shaking his head going, you have what I want you to have. And I'm not judging you based on them. I'm judging you because the more that you have, the more you're going to be held accountable. The more responsibility that you have. But all I need to be focused on is, what has God given me? And am I using that to my fullest potential? Or tick, tick, tick. Are all those 86,000 seconds every day just wasting away with me focused on myself? He gives us what he knows we can handle. Not necessarily according to our comfort level either. Matthew 25, verse 16, he says, he who had received the 5 talents, he got the most. He who received the 5 talents, look what it says. He went at once, without hesitation. He went at once and he traded with them. And he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent, what did he do? He went and he dug a hole in the ground and he hid his master's money. Now after a long time, the master of those servants came and he settled accounts with them. So the difference between the first 2 servants and the third servant, the first 2 acted immediately, but the third one, he was afraid. See, the first 2, as soon as they were given an opportunity, they acted on it. Now, did they know it was going to succeed? No. But they acted on it. Because faith is an action. The opposite of faith, we always want to think, okay, well, you either have faith or you have unbelief. The opposite of faith is not unbelief. The opposite of faith, according to the Bible, is fear. Fear is an action. If you feel like God's calling you to do something, if you feel like he's giving you the talent and the potential to do something, and you're afraid, listen, that's normal. If you feel like that God has called me to do something, and he's gifted me to do this, and you're afraid to do it, welcome to the club. You'll make a great disciple. You'll make a great disciple. That's the normal process. But Jesus also told us how to get over that fear and to move forward. He told us how to get over it. He said 365 times, do not be afraid in the Bible. So how do we get over it? Do you remember when Jesus told Peter to walk on water? Jesus is out there walking on water. All the disciples are in the boat afraid. And Peter recognizes him and he says, Lord, if that's really you, tell me to come out there. And Jesus is like, come on. And what happened? Peter got out of the boat. And he did something incredible. He walked on water. He walked on water. Now, we give him a hard time. I call him the Rock because he sunk in a few minutes. But he did something incredible. He did something that none of us have ever done. He took a few steps on the water. And as long as he was looking at Jesus, he was walking on water. But at the moment that he took his eyes off Jesus and stopped looking at him and began to look at the world around him and all the problems going on around him, he began to see the storm and he began to see the big waves, and all of a sudden, fear set in. It wasn't unbelief. It was fear. And Jesus is letting us know right there that the way to get past the fear in your life and to walk on the water that he's called you to do, which don't even make no sense, but he gave you the ability to do it. And the way you do it is you stop looking at all the problems in your life. You stop looking at all the reasons I can't do this. And you look at the one that said, come on, follow me. What ministry has he called you to that you're too afraid to do? I'm not even talking big stuff. I'm not talking about, quit your job and be a missionary in Libya or something. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about in your life. On that lampstand, in that house, in that neighborhood, in that job, in this church, where he has placed you to shine your light, that still small voice, what is he calling you to do, and you're too afraid to do it? What phone call has he prompted you to make to somebody, and you're too afraid to call them? You're too much fear to have that conversation. Matthew 25:19. Now after a long time, the master of those servants came, and he settled accounts with them. Verse 20. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. And his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. And his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over little. I will set you over much. You see the reward? The reward is not a retirement plan. You're faithful with a little bit that he entrusted you with. And the reward is more responsibility in the kingdom of heaven. And sharing in the joy of the master. The whole point of the book of Hebrews is for us to grow up and to mature as Christians. He doesn't want our church to be a nursery spiritually. He wants us to grow up to become stronger servants of Christ. Listen, you don't send a soldier to a peaceful country typically. What do? You send a soldier to where there's issues and where there's a problem and where I need somebody to go and make a difference. So he's raising us up to be soldiers of Christ, not infants of Christ. And verse 22, and he also who had the 2 talents came forward saying, Master, you delivered me 2 talents. Here I am. Or here, I have made 2 talents more. And his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over little. I'm going to set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. You know, the Greek word for good there does not refer to the outcome. He's not saying, well done. I gave you $5 million and you made another $5 million. He is not praising him over the outcome of that investment. That's not what the word means. The word in Greek means this. It refers to the inner character of the person. When he says well done, when he says good job, he's not talking about, oh, listen, you were very shrewd in your investments and you doubled the money. No, he's saying, no. It's talking about the heart. You had the right heart. Well done. God is not judging based on the outcome. He's judging based on the heart. And the other word, faithful, when he says, well done, faithful servant. The word faithful in the Greek refers to someone who is trustworthy and loyal and consistent. Trustworthy, loyal, and consistent. So you know what that means? That means that God is not like us. God does not celebrate how much I have accomplished. He celebrates how faithful, how trustworthy, and how consistent I am with what he entrusted to me. He celebrates what's in my heart. See, now the world celebrates having more talent than somebody else. But Jesus says this world's not your home. You know, you may not ever get a ticker tape parade like a team that won the World Series because you were faithful to God in something you did. You may not get to meet the president and have a photo taken like they do if they win the Super Bowl because they had all that talent. You use your talent, you may not get those kinds of things. But Jesus said that the rewards we get, because those are temporary, the rewards we get last forever because this is not our home. I read a story this week about a missionary. He went 40 years as a missionary in like some third world country. Basically just forgotten about. He took the calling and he took the talent that God gave him and he went over there and you know what? He led almost none to Christ. in 40 years. But every day he was consistent and consistent. And every day, through prayer, he worked and he worked tirelessly. Every day. He made the most of what he had. And after 40 years of pretty much nobody even missing him, he finally returned back to America. And here's what he wrote in his journal. He said, there was no parade for me. He said there was no news coverage of me returning back home. He said, in fact, while everyone else had people meeting them and welcoming them on the dock, he said, for me, it was just an empty dock. And he said, but as I stood there on the dock, watching everyone else get welcomed home, he said, I heard God whisper, this is not your home. If you want the applause of man, you can get it. But this is not our home. The reward we have, based on not whether your talent is better than their talent, but based on how well you use your talent based on the potential God has. There's a reward coming. Matthew 25:24 says this. He also who had received the one talent came forward saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you didn't sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid. And I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what's yours. But the master answered him, you wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I had not sown, and knew that I gathered where I scattered no seed. So you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So then he said, take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents, because everyone who has more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he does have will be taken away. So this parable stings. This is the guy that just wanted the participation trophy. He said, I knew that you were a hard man. See, what's going on is this guy had a theology of fear. A theology of fear is when your theology is in your head and it's not in your heart. It's about rules. It's about how God's going to get you if you don't, if you break the rules and you don't do what you're supposed to do. But it's also a theology that causes you to have a mindset of how little can I get away with. The mantra at Whiting Field, the 35 years that I was there, you could go up to almost anybody who had been there at any length of time at Whiting Field, and you could go up to them and you could say, hey, what you been up to? And the response was almost always, as little as I can get away with. As little as I can get away with. See, that's religion. Religion in your head is whenever I'm just going to do as little as I can get away with and get into heaven. I want a participation trophy. I want to lay down. I want to just lay down in the aisle over here and make carpet angels. As long as I get in. That's a religion of fear. That's a theology of fear. See, what happens is, A.W. Tozer said this, what comes into our minds when we think about God, that is the most important thing about you. What that means is this. If your religion is based on a distant God somewhere, then you're going to be distant in your relationship with God. If your theology, if your religion is based on, well, I've got to go through a priest or a preacher, or I've got to go through these rituals to get to God, then there's always going to be a separation between you and God. It's always going to be up here, and it's not going to be up here. That's the whole point of the parable, to move from religion to relationship. If fear is, if you are afraid, if God is just like the big boogeyman in the sky that, listen, I don't want to get involved in this. I don't want to teach a Sunday school class. What if I do something wrong? The Bible says I'm going to be held to a higher standard. I'm going to be held accountable. What if I do something wrong? If that's how you think about God, then that's what your relationship with God is like. And that's how you live out your life. In fear. But if you have a relationship with Jesus Christ in your heart, and you feel in your heart that closeness with him, and you understand the love he has for you, if you view God as a gracious, loving Father, then that's how you live your life, as a gracious, loving person. If God is a generous God with you, then you become a generous person with other people. A.W. Tozer was right. However you think about God, that's the most important thing about you. Here's a quote from the Bible Knowledge Commentary. The third servant, having received the 1 talent, he reasoned that his master might not be coming back at all. And if he did return one day, the servant could simply return the talent to his master without loss from any poor investment he might have made. But if the master failed to return, then the servant wanted to be able to keep the talent for himself. See, if he deposited it in the bank, then there would be a record that showed that the talent didn't actually belong to him in the first place. So his reasoning indicated that he lacked faith in his master. So he proved to be a worthless servant, and as a result, he lost what he had and was cast into judgment. Verse says, so I was afraid, and I hid your talent in the ground. What was he afraid of? He was afraid to step out in faith and to do something that God was only calling him to do. Not only calling him to do it, but had gifted him to do it. Jesus says that's rebellion. There's a judgment coming, but I don't want y'all to be confused. The end of this parable is scary, because the end of this parable sounds like, when you read it, that, well, the guy who didn't do what he was supposed to do with the talent, the servant, he's going to hell. But you have to understand, parables are not meant to put new theology out there. Here's what Jesus said. Matthew 25:28. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Parables, though, are not meant to be a thesis on theology or church doctrine. Is Jesus saying that you're going to go to hell because you didn't live up to your full potential? Of course not. None of us are going to live up to our full potential. That's not the point of the parable. The point of the parable is to force you to look at your relationship in your heart and not in your head. Jesus said in Matthew 6:19, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. Because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. There is a judgment seat for us. But it is not the one to condemn us. It's the one to reward us. In the book of Revelation, it talks about the great white throne judgment. The great white throne judgment is not for us. We are going to be, if you have accepted Christ as your Savior, your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. You are saved. But that doesn't mean we won't go through a judgment. 2 Corinthians 5:10 says this, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one of us may receive what is due for us, the things done while in the body, whether good or bad. You're not going to be judged based on whether or not you get to go to heaven or hell. You're saved. But that doesn't mean you get to lay in the grass and make grass angels. Faith is an action. Faith is an action. We're going to fail sometimes. We're all afraid to start ministries. We're all afraid to have conversations with people. We're all going to mess it up and we're going to fail. But you need to know the God who covers us with his grace. And grace is not an excuse to bury our gifts. Grace is why we invest in them. Listen, not only every breath that you have is from God. Everything that you have is from God. I'm going to close with this. I know we're running late, but I'm going to close with this real quick. God trusts you. Have you ever thought about that? See, we always want to talk about, I've got to have more faith in God. I've got to put my trust in God. I've put my trust in Jesus. Have you ever thought about it from the other perspective, though? This parable, the whole point, if you get nothing else out of this, the whole point of this parable is this. God trusts you. He put his faith in you. He entrusted you with everything that you have because he trusts you. If nothing else, that should make you want to use your talents in a better way. About 15 years ago, we took a youth group to Panama City for a weekend for a youth retreat. And there was 2 young teenage boys that I had some people come to me beforehand and say, well, listen, they're a handful. These guys are a handful. We're gonna want you to have them in your room. You're gonna kind of be their chaperone. Your job is to keep your thumb on them, because these 2 are a handful. It's like, okay, great. It's gonna be an awesome weekend. And so we get to Panama City, and we get checked into our rooms. And we get down to the very first service, and we're not 5 minutes into the service. 5 minutes into the service. And the first one leans over to me and he says, I gotta go to the bathroom. And immediately the other one says, yeah, me too. Now I'd already been warned. What's going to happen is they're going to disappear on you. And I'm going to miss the whole rest of the worship session because I'm going to be hunting for these 2 guys. And so my first instinct was, absolutely not. Sit your behind down. You ain't going nowhere. But I didn't say that for some reason. It had to be a God thing. I wasn't this smart. But instead of saying, sit your behind down, what I said was, okay, but I'm trusting you. That don't sound like me. I said, okay, I'm going to trust you. You go straight to the bathroom and you come straight back. Man, their eyes got like this big. Like they had never had anybody say that to them before. You're trusting me? And you know what they did? I don't even think they went to the bathroom. They weren't gone 30 seconds. They disappeared, they came back, and they grabbed me by the arm, and they said, hey, we're back. We're back. Just like you said. I'm like, sweet, awesome. And we enjoyed the rest of the worship service. And I'm telling you what, the rest of the weekend, I had no issues with those guys. Because they didn't want to disappoint me. Because I put my trust in them. God has trusted you with everything you have. What are you going to do about it? You don't want to disappoint him. We're going to have our communion service.